We're having some fun now. We are in Module 5. You have made it to the midway point of the class. By the time you get to the end of this lab, you'll be more than halfway done. So that is pretty exciting. You'll be on your way to your new career in no time. So with this particular module, we're going to go over printing. Printing is a big part of being an IT administrator. And unfortunately, it's also something that a lot of people don't get. It can be very complicated. Now, I realize that in a previous class, you did set up a shared printer from a workstation. And so we're going to take that a step further and do shared printing on a server, but we're also going to use a print management utility that comes with Windows Server 2016, and it's something I'm sure that most of you have not seen in the past. So we're going to understand how printing works, and we're going to use the print management tool. Going to configure properties and permissions as well. So network printing process components, you've got a lot of different parts and pieces to this. You've got the printer itself, you've got the client, the print server, the print job, the print driver. All these different things make network printing work. This is a lot different than just plugging your printer directly into your computer using a USB cable. You have spooling, which frees the server CPU to handle other requests. So instead of spooling your print job on the server all the time, we now have the option of spooling the print job onto the local computer, use the process power that the local computer has, and then send it off to the server to be printed at that point. So that really frees up the server a lot in many different types of offices. So when a client wants to print a print job through the internet, they have another option. The client must have the Internet Printing Client installed. It's installed as part of Windows Server 2016, and it allows the client and the server to communicate using a common protocol, but without that client having to be a member of the domain. So if you have visitors in your office and you want them to be able to print, then Windows Server 2016 has a solution for that called the Internet Printing Client. 2016 can be configured to act as a web-based print server. So you've got the Internet Printing Client, Print and Document Services role must be installed, and you also need to install Internet Information Services, which is the web server piece of the server. So as soon as you install the Print and Document Services with the Internet Printing role, IIS will automatically install with it, and it will pre-configure itself to a certain degree. You may have to still do some things on top of that. So the Print and Document Services role enables you to set up 2016 as a print server. Now, it doesn't have to be installed in order for your server to be a print server. You can do it the same way you do in Windows 10, where you just right-click on a printer and share it, and people can connect to it. However, with the Print and Document Services role, you have a lot more features that we're going to talk about. So you can configure group policy, for instance, where you can, after you share a printer, you can add it to group policy and make it automatically be added to any of your client computers as soon as they log in. So they don't have to go search for the printer. So that's a nice feature. You have much better ability to manage your shared printers, and you can track events such as failures, print failures in the event viewer. So you have several different role services when it comes to adding the Print and Document Services role. By the way, I should mention that that is somewhat confusing to people. When they go into the Server Manager and they go to add a server role, sometimes you have sub-roles underneath the server roles. Let's say, for instance, you're adding Internet Information Services, which is the web server role. Besides the web server, another sub-role would be the FTP capability. Also, the ability to have secure pages using SSL certificates. So all of these are called role services. So the server role is IIS. FTP is a role service. Very confusing, but basically anything that looks like a sub-role to a major role is called a role service. So in this particular case, role services that come with the Print and Document Services role, one of them is the print server, which is the main reason you would want to install the printer, the print management server role. Then you have the distributed scan server. This works only with specific models. It doesn't work with every type of scanner, but it allows Windows Server 2016 to receive scanned documents from network scanners, and then it can send them to a shared folder, it can send them to email, it can send them directly to a client's folder on their computer as well. Another role service that's part of this that we just talked about before was internet printing. Creates a website, allows guests to go in and print, add the printers and then print to those particular printers without being members of Active Directory. Then you have the LPD service, which is for Linux and Unix computers. So you can set up shared printers that Linux and Unix computers can use through Server 2016. The 2016 Devices and Printers Utility is a tool that you can use to configure printers. This is not to be confused with the print management server role. So this is just the basic, go into Control Panel, open up the devices and printers, and you can share printers right from there. It's very simple, very easy, very quick, something you've probably done before in a previous class, and certainly something you can do in 2016, but you just don't have all those additional capabilities that we just talked about. So this is what it looks like. It looks just like it did in 2012. Looks very similar to Windows 10, Windows 8. You just basically choose your printer, right-click on it and choose Share, or if you want to add a printer, you click the Add a Printer option. It goes out and it tries to find a printer that it hasn't already added, and then it tries to add the drivers. And if it can't find the printer, it can't find the drivers, then you have the option to manually do that as well. Very simple, something that we'll show you in the mini videos in the labs. Print management tool that we just saw is also available as an MMC snap-in. So we did MMCs in a previous lab, and you can add that as a snap-in if you would like. Centralizes local and shared printing control in one place and enables printer administrators to basically set up these shared printers. The print management tool allows you to install and configure local and network printers and configure printer properties. So now we're in the print management tool that comes with the server role that we just talked about previously. So you're going to see a completely different looking interface here than you saw with the devices and printers in Control Panel. So now you're seeing all your printers, you're seeing all your drivers, you're seeing the deployed printers through group policy. All these different things are capable using this print management tool. You can set up special forms. So if you have a special size paper that isn't in the default sizes, it allows you to create a custom size. That's very cool. Allows you to configure special print spooler properties so everybody spools the same way in case you want them to all do it a certain way for whatever reason. Allows you to set up security. So you can say, these people can print and these people can't print. Or if both of these groups of people try to print at the same time, then they get a priority. So you can say the owners of the company have priority over, say, the admin staff. So you can set up that as well. You can update a specific printer driver. So if you know some people have 32-bit Windows and some have 64-bit Windows, you can install those print drivers here, and it'll automatically push out based on the type of operating system they have automatically. So lots of great things you can do using this print server role. In Windows Server 2016, you can configure a printer that is attached to the server computer as a local printer as well. So what we were talking about before was basically network printers that may be connected using TCP/IP. But you can also share printers that are physically connected to the server as well, the same exact way. So if they have a USB connection rather than a network connection, then you can do that. So here we have installing local and shared printers. You can see here there's workstations, there's a laser printer, and there's Windows Server 2016. So all of these printers, whether they're physically connected with USB, as you see in the lower left corner, or with a network in the upper right-hand corner, which is done through wireless, all of those can be shared through Windows Server 2016, and then the workstations themselves can pick up on those printers either manually or automatically through group policy, and then they can start printing to them. When you add a shared printer, you got to consider some things such as a share name. Typically, I like to use a share name that says where the printer is or what department is using it. So that way when people are looking for the right printer or the best printer for them to use, especially in a big office, it will have something very descriptive for them that will allow them to know exactly where that printer is. Printer properties are accessible from the Print Management tool by right-clicking the printer and choosing Properties. Now in the Devices and Printers in Control panel, it's a little different. You right-click and you choose Printer Properties rather than Properties. But in the Printer Property Server role, Print Management tool, you just right-click and choose Properties. So a little bit different way to get to the same thing, and you see all these different options that you see here. And this is what it looks like when you go to the properties of the printer. You see the various different tabs. The General tab gets you started with some basic information. Then you can go to the Sharing tab. The Sharing tab is very similar to sharing a folder. You can go in to the Sharing tab and you can put in the name and specify who you want to be able to print. You can also add additional drivers there as well. So there's where the Sharing tab is. And you see another option here where it says render print jobs on client computers. That's where you basically spool everything on the client rather than having it go to the server, so that frees the server up. And I always recommend that you check the box for list in directory if this is a printer you want other people to use, which in most cases it will be. So list in directory allows a user to search for it or browse to it when they go in their own control panel to devices and printers to look for it. It'll search Active Directory, find it, and they can select it much more easily rather than a manual process. So always check that. This is the Ports tab. This is where you typically add the type of physical connection the printer has to the server. So the old-fashioned LPT and COM ports, we don't really use those too much anymore. So what you would do is you click on Add Port, and then if it's a network printer, you would add a TCP/IP port at that time. And there's the option local port or standard TCP/IP port when you go to add the printer. You have an Advanced tab that allows the printer to you can set up a range of hours for when the printer is going to be available. You can set a priority, as I mentioned earlier, so certain groups of people have a higher priority in case print jobs show up at the same time. So this is the Advanced tab where you can change the driver if you need to. Sometimes new drivers come out and you want to change the driver. And then there's the spooling print documents options where you can have it spooled immediately, or you can start printing after the first test page is spooled. So that works with the rendering option that we saw under a previous tab. The Advanced tab provides the option to use the spooled printing or to bypass the spooler. You have other options such as holding mismatched documents, printing spooled documents first, etc. So you also have some advanced options such as the data type. Is it a raw type of data, text type of data? Typically you won't make any changes to this. The default most of the time is leave it as it is. Microsoft will automatically detect it and put in the correct one. On the occasion where that's not the case, then you would look to the vendor to tell you which boxes to check. I don't recommend you go in and make any changes to that on your own without vendor information. Then there's the security information. There are standard permissions and there are special permissions. Most of the time you will not need to change any special permissions, but you should be aware that they are there. So you can manage the printer permissions going into the security tab, and by default everyone is going to be able to print. So if that's not what you want, you may want to remove the everyone group and replace it with a group you do want. So if you have a printer, say for instance, that costs a lot to print to it, maybe a high-end color printer where every page could be fairly expensive and you don't want just anybody printing to it, you can remove the everyone group and just put the group or the people that you want to be able to print to that high-end printer. So that's one example of why you would want to do that. This is the security tab, and these show the basic permissions that you see here. You've got the print, manage this printer, manage documents, and special permissions. So strangely enough, the one that has the highest permissions of all these are manage this printer. It's in the middle, which is unusual for Microsoft to do that, but manage this printer means that you can go in and you can change the permissions of others. If you go into the Advanced tab, you will see the special permissions. And you can set up printer auditing, take ownership of a printer, view effective permissions the same way you could do when you go and share a folder. It also allows you to fine-tune some additional permissions, but again, typically you won't want to do that. So for a shared printer, you can track successful or failed attempts to all these different options. Printing, managing, reading, share permissions, etc. You can audit that and see if anyone's doing something they shouldn't be up to. You can connect to a network printer by using the Network Printer Installation Wizard. So there is some steps for that on pages 271 and 272 of your book. But of course, we also cover all this in the mini videos that are in each of the labs. So just click on the links of those and it'll show you how to do all that. So this is the Printer Installation Wizard where it finds the printer you want. You click Next and then Install. So users with print permissions can send jobs to the printers. This is important. You might see some quiz questions on this. Send print jobs to the printer, pause, resume, or cancel their own print jobs. They can't cancel other people's print jobs. Printer operators, however, print operators and server operators have additional rights that you see here. And to manage documents as the administrator, you can use the print management tool that we already took a look at. In Server 2016, printer control and setup information for a particular printer is associated with that printer's properties and the printer queue. So sometimes you need to do some things to the printer, such as pausing the printer. You can pause the printer by right-clicking on it and choosing the pause printing option. So this happens on occasion when somebody accidentally sends a big print job and is like, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. Or somebody else needs to get access to that printer and you want to cancel that print job. You can go in and do that as well. Then you can resume again and the print job will continue. Also, you might have a paper jam where you want to change the color of the paper. Lots of different reasons that you may want to pause or cancel a print job. So there's the pause printing option, and beneath that is the cancel all documents. I've had several times where I've accidentally printed to an inkjet printer when I meant to send it to the laserjet printer, where the laserjet printer would print it much more inexpensively, which is what I really wanted for a big print job to do. So sometimes you get into a job and you want to cancel the document. There are troubleshooting steps for common printing problems. You can use the print management tool. You could also use the devices and printers option in control panel as well. But the print management tool does give you an overall view of all the printers all at once, so you definitely want to use that instead. It can check the status of a printer to see if it's offline or paused. You can see some typical printing problems such as the spooler service. So this is actually, the spooler service is a service that runs on both the Windows Server and on the client. And if it stops on either one of them, then the print job will likely fail. So you may want to get a look at the spooler service on the server to see whether there's any kinds of issues. So we took a look at all different kinds of printing options, and of course in the lab itself you're going to want to click on any of the videos that will help you, if you haven't seen it before, set up your print management tool. And I think that you'll gain a lot of good experience with that. Printing, as I mentioned earlier, is something that is a big cause of frustration for a lot of people. So knowing how to use this tool, or even the devices in printers, using in control panel and sharing the printers, is a great skill to have as an IT administrator. So good luck on this particular module, and we'll see you in Module 6.